Caroline Martin is an expert in tennis biomechanics and works in the M2S laboratory in France, and has notably worked with top players such as Ons Jabeur, Daniel Medvedev, Felix Aliassime, Valentin Vachereau, Corentin Moutet, Hugo Gaston, and the list goes on. Absolutely love this conversation to understand more behind the science on what goes on in the lab and how that actually links to the practice court and some of the technical changes that can be made to increase performance. Fascinating conversation. Really hope you enjoy. Hey Caroline, thank you so much for joining me today. Appreciate it.
Hello.
I think a good place to start for us today is just to know a little bit more about what led you down the biomechanic pathway. Was it from your own playing career? Was it injuries for you? I'd be really curious to know what led you down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. First of all, I'm passionate about tennis. I think it's the most important thing to say. So I'm a former tennis player. At 17, I was in the top 10 in France in junior ranking. And after my baccalaureate, I started studying sports science. And at the same time, I was playing on the ITF professional tour, the 10,000 and 25,000 tournaments. After a few years, I got my tennis coaching diploma in France and started coaching at a club near my home with kids. And then at the committee of Ille-et-Vilaine, near my home, and where I was in charge of women's tennis and university tennis. And during my studies, I discovered that it was possible to do research in sports sciences and in tennis in particular. And I really became passionate about it. I saw scientific research as an opportunity to answer questions I'd been asking myself as a tennis player. And then as a tennis coach, particularly concerning the serve, the biomechanics of the serve, because for me it was a stroke I found very difficult to master as a player. I was injured in my shoulder, and for me it was also a stroke difficult to teach with the kids. And so I continued in this direction by obtaining a master's degree in sports science, and after that a 3-year thesis on the biomechanical optimization of the serve with 2 main goals: improving performance and reducing injury. And today I'm associate professor in a sports science lab in Rennes 2 University. That's my background.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. It's very extensive. I wanted to dive into the serve, maybe after, but now that you've brought it up, I think we should just go straight there, considering that's the main part of your research. So, what are the best servers doing? If we kind of break down some of the core principles or the core key things that you need to have to be a great server, what are those things?
Yeah, I would say that the best servers are able to hit the ball very hard, of course, but with high impact heights, and which allows them to have a very large safety margin over the net. The power of the leg drive and their shoulder internal rotation and pronation speeds are often very high in best servers. They are also able of having a very stable, very reproducible ball toss, regardless of the target area or the effects, slice or kick or flat produced, because they are able to disguise their playing intention from the opponent. It's another strong point of their serve. And maybe the last point is they are able to have a very good timing between the upper body and the lower limb, because they are able to accelerate the racket at the exact right or good moment in the serve when the leg begins their extension, and this can optimize the transfer of energy between the upper and the lower body.
Yeah, super interesting. Like when I'm working with players, one thing I think about is like finding the right style of serve or the right style of shot that suits their body or like what I notice in their athletic attributes. So I think what I was keen to ask you is like, are there different types of serves that you would recommend that should be matched to particular body types or particular kind of athletic types, if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's not so easy to say, but for sure, many coaches continue to copy models
Yeah.
from the top level and apply them to their players without understanding that lies behind them, you know? And there is no single perfect technique that suits everyone because, as you said, everybody is different. My abilities are not the same than yours. Every player is different, and you have to find the technique that suits them best based on their physical characteristics, their anatomy, their muscular qualities, and also their tactical options. Because if you are a player like Giovanni Mpecci, you are very tall, for sure your tactical options are not the same than if you are Diego Schwartzman, for example. And Schwartzman will prefer to have a very high percentage of serve in because for sure he will not be able to hit massive serves for a long period of time because his height is not the same than Giovanni. So of course there are profiles of players, but you have to think about what is the best technique for my player considering his technical abilities, his physical characteristics, and also his tactical options.
So do you think you need to look at that first? Like if you're getting the blueprint of the style of serve that you want to create for the player, like breaking down that and then mapping something that will connect in that way?
Yeah, for sure. For me, the biomechanics is just a small pieces of the big puzzle. And in the big puzzle, there are a lot of different pieces, the tactical part, the physical part, the mental part, the tactical options, the anatomy of the player, the history of injuries. And everything, of course, is linked. And for sure, when you try to improve the serve of your player, you have to take into account all of these elements. And then when you observe a player's technical behavior, you have to try to understand the cause and the consequences of the motion. Of course, in terms of performance and risk of injury, and in relationships with all the other elements to do the best choice for him or for her.
This episode is brought to you by Rackets and Strings, which is Adelaide's leading racket specialist. There are two locations, one in Mile End and one in Summerton Park. But don't fear, if you're not in Adelaide, you can go online and get everything you need. All tennis accessories, all racket sport accessories as well. If you are in store, you can try before you buy. They have 2 hitting walls in both their locations. You can take a demo away and you're getting expert advice from the best in the business. They are a family business that have been doing it for 40 years and Matt has been doing it for 20 himself. So he is extremely knowledgeable and is very good at steering you in the right direction to actually get the right equipment that is going to be good for your personal needs. And that's what makes them better than the rest, in our opinion. So please head to Rackets on Strings online, or if you're in Adelaide, get in store and get the best deals in town.
Would you be able to give me some examples that you've seen or you've worked with a particular type of body that,
or attributes that you've kind of helped them create a style of serve, or particular like tactical elements that you've maybe instructed someone to have a certain type of serve for, maybe their mentality or their attributes in this way?
Yeah, yeah.
I think this would be interesting to break down.
Yeah, for example, we worked a few years ago with Hugo Gaston and with Corentin Moutet, two French top-level players, and they are not very tall, maybe 1.70 meters for both of them. And for sure, when I talked with the coach, their coach is telling me that the speed was not the priority for them, but the priority for them to improve the serve was the percentage of serve in. And so we try to increase their impact height to give them a better margin for error over the net, because it was the priority for them in relationship with their tactical option and with their physical abilities. And so we worked on a specific lower limb leg drive based on more plyometric style to increase the speed of the leg drive and to allow them to take off the ground around 25 centimeters above the ground and to maximize the impact height.
That's interesting because obviously they're a bit smaller, so trying to find more leg drive.
Yeah.
And then obviously both of them being left-handed, just trying to utilize the slice, especially out wide on the ad side.
Yes. Yeah.
So they can get the forehand and get to work and stay ahead in the rally on the first ball, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Whereas opposed to someone that had like obviously more height, maybe a fast arm combination, someone 6'2", 6'3", that already has a fast arm as well, they could go for something with less of a jump but more explosive leg and arm action that's able to hit more through the ball, or not so much trying to focus on contact height. Is this kind of what you would work with?
I have another example with Valentin Vachereau, who just won the Master 1000.
Yes.
100. I never know.
Yeah, 1000.
In Shanghai. Yeah. And with him, when he came to the lab, the coach told us that Valentin is a tall guy, but he's a great player, but he did not serve hard enough considering his height. And for example, we quickly identified that the height of his arabesque, the free leg that goes up at the end of the serve. So the height of his arabesque was limited, and it was at around the knee. And when professional players have an arabesque at the height of the head, and his trunk flexion speed was also lower than our reference values. And we asked him to increase the height of his arabesque, and he very quickly gained 8 or 9 kilometers per hour of speed, because he is tall, but it's hard for him to rotate his trunk and his body with speed, because he has long segments, long trunk, and it's not easy for him to create speed. So we tried to improve the speed of the serve, not by saying him to rotate more and with more speed, but by adjusting the height of the arabesque. And so it's another example for a tall guy, and it does not always go like that for all players. Often the gain are more limited at high levels, a few centimeters of impact height or a few kilometers per hour, but it's a good example of another problematic for another kind of player.
Yeah, Interesting. What are like common things that you see, like common problems that you find solutions for? Like, what would be the most common couple that you think do this and then you start to see improvement here?
It depends on the problematic of the players, but a very common biomechanical issue for a lot of players, whatever their level, is with the foot up technique, or the pinpoint stance. Some players bring the back foot to the side of the front foot, and moving the back foot on its side favors the pelvic and the hip rotation toward the net, and the back hip turns very early towards the net, and this can create a separation angle between the upper arm and the back hip. And so as a consequence, the shoulder can be in a very tricky and uncomfortable position. This position is called hyperangulation, because the shoulder is torn between the advancing back hip and the racket moving back at the same time. And this can force the humeral head to move forward and to rub against the rotator cuff tendons. So this can increase the risks of shoulder injuries. And this can also overload the lower back and the abdominal and induce injuries.
Interesting. Yeah. So over time, that's going to cause a lot of shoulder issue, or could cause some serious shoulder issue. Yeah, interesting. Like if you don't have access to data, like obviously you're in the lab, what advice would you give coaches to improve, I guess, their biomechanical eye to, I guess, solve some of these issues without actually having maybe more access to data?
For sure, for beginners and intermediate players, coaches can use the video. You can use a smartphone. It's very easy, and it's a valuable tool in biomechanical analysis, because the serve is such a rapid motion that the naked eye is not always sufficient. So the video can be a very good tool. And from the video or from your eye, there are many simple visual indicators that coaches can observe without the need for a very detailed laboratory analysis. I mentioned the arabesque, for example. In the lab, I will measure the player's trunk flexion speed during the serve, but on the court, the coach can do the same. But he can look at the height of the arabesque at the end of the serve, because the height of the arabesque is a consequence of the trunk flexion and the speed of the trunk flexion, and both elements are linked. So it is important for coaches to be trained to understand the key visual indicators of serving performance. And when you understand the causes and the consequence of the motion, it's a very good start to applying biomechanical principles on court.
Okay. And where would you say the best way to learn those key kind of like checkpoints or the key kind of parts of the serve that you need to train your eye to see?
Yeah.
Is that something that you teach outside of the lab, or would
Yes,
there be things that you
Yeah, I try. In France, we have a lot of training courses for coaches. So I try to meet the coaches and tell them what I know about the serve, the theoretical parts, and also the practical drills that they can use on court. But there are also a lot of resources on internet. Of course, everything is not good, but you have a lot of pedagogical and data and information about biomechanics on the ITF website, for example. In Australia, you have a very good, you have very good diploma, And I think that it's important to include biomechanical knowledge in the training courses for coaches.
For sure. It seems like France are doing a really good job with developing a lot of talent, and a lot of talent that looks like they're able to express themselves and play more their own unique style and not be like the same style, robotic kind of player that just keeps coming out from the same country that has all the same attributes. So, from your experience working with so many players and in the lab in France, what do you think you guys are doing well to actually produce so many great players that have their own unique style?
It's a good question. I think that we have a lot of different players with so many different attributes, you know. You can see I mentioned Hugo Gaston and Corentin Moutet, and you have Giovanni Mpecci or Arthur Hinderknecht, and
Arthur Fils.
these guys are very different. Arthur Fils with maximal power. And so I think in France, in the last maybe 10 or 20 years, it's better and better to take into account the tactical patterns of the players, but also the physical abilities, and to find the best biomechanics, I would say.
For the tactical elements for that player based on their physical attributes.
Yeah. And their playing style, their identity of play.
Yeah, very interesting. Because I feel like a lot of countries are not doing a good job with that. So, and it seems obvious that France are doing a good job. So is that something that coaches are actually teaching, or they're trying to find the personality and the game style, match that early?
I don't know if all of this is very conscious, or it's maybe more related to the mindset. I don't know. It's not easy to say.
Sure. And do you just focus on serve, or do you do mechanics on forehand, backhand, other strokes, just movement patterns as well in the lab?
In the lab, my research are mainly dedicated to the biomechanics of the serve, but of course, we did different research and studies on other strokes. For example, in a few years ago, we decided to compare the open stance forehand and the neutral stance forehand to evaluate the risk of injury for the hips. And we did the same with the backhand. So yes, the main part of my research is dedicated to the serve, but depending on the project, on the topics with my students, or with different collaboration, we collaborated, for example, with Wilson to elaborate a new prototype of shoes. So it depends.
Sure. And what did you find with the open stance and the neutral stance on the forehand?
Yeah. For the open stance, the loadings on the hips and on the knees are higher than on the neutral stance, and more especially during defensive strokes. The main problem is not an open stance during an attacking stance, an attacking stroke. The loadings are not higher for this type of forehand, but they are higher when you are in a defensive position with a very high open stance, like, for example, Djokovic, with feet very separated, and you are very open stance. And in this situation, the loadings are extreme for the hips and for the knee, and this can increase the risk of injuries in the mid and the long terms.
Of course, I mean, even the adductors as well, that many end range forehands and backhands, even when I'm sliding and playing those, I just feel after a match I'm so sore.
Yeah.
When I'm really having to stretch and move against a good player. Like it's I don't know if I could play another match the next day with that sort of intensity. Yeah, it's not with these guys and how intense they're playing. It's to do that for how long Djokovic has done it is quite incredible, to be honest.
Yeah.
Do you work with finding or helping coaches with drills? So, like, would you recommend certain drills to do on the coaching court with the serve or particular strokes in general?
Yes, concerning the drills, it's not easy to give you all the drills that I recommend, but if I take again the example of the arabesque at the end of the serve, when the player lands on the ground, we know that the arabesque is a result of the player's trunk engagement and the forward body rotation. And we know that the faster and harder the player rotates forward, the faster the ball speed, and the higher the arabesque at the end of the motion. So, for example, a very simple drill you can use is to ask your player to deliberately exaggerate the arabesque at the end of the serve. Of course, it depends on the forward position of the ball toss, and sometimes you have to advance a little bit your ball toss to facilitate your forward engagement. But when you give this instruction, you realize that the players push harder on the legs and engage more forward the trunk, which allows them to gain ball speed. So you don't need very complex drills or a lot of material or equipment to do this kind of drill. It's very simple. Just with advice and recommendation, you can have very positive aspects, but it depends on your knowledge of causes and consequences of the motion. If you know that, it's easy to create drills.
Okay. Yes, for sure. Makes sense. And has there been players that you've worked with that have really surprised you in how open they were, or how they really were curious in understanding the mechanics, that you really enjoyed working with because they really wanted to be involved a lot in the process?
Maybe the best example for me was Hans Jaber, the Tunisian player. She was number 8, I guess, when she came to the lab with his physical coach. And it was funny because during the test, she was the boss. She came behind the computer to look at the data, to try another series of serve, to modify things. And of course, she's a very talented player. So it was easy for her to try a new option of serve and to compare with the usual one. And for me, the test with Hans was a very good one because she understood why she was there, and she wanted to benefit from the test, from the analysis. So she was 100% motivated and involved in the test.
Yeah. And that's not always the case?
It depends. It depends on, sometimes it's more the coach that who are motivated. Sometimes it's more the players, sometimes it's both of them, sometimes they disagree about what is the best option to to do for the serve. And so with my colleagues, we are like the third voice, to help them to make a choice and to say, yes, the objective data say that. So in our opinion, it's the best option. And sometimes it's not easy because the player has his own feelings. The coach has his own opinion, and you have also the data, and you have to deal with all these elements to propose the best option for the player.
Yeah, that would be challenging, especially as a player. It can be hard to make changes when you've been doing a certain way and you have a certain feeling, and then you've got the schedule of the tour, and it's hard to make. You almost need to take time off, and players don't want to do that. And it does make it challenging.
Sure.
Do you see any changes in I guess the game or mechanics or the way you view mechanics moving forward into the future? Do you see that it's basically going to turn a lot more into data and understanding data? Like, what's your impression or feeling about this?
I would say that for me, maybe the most important thing at the moment is related about the slowdown of the surfaces and the quality of balls, because we hear a lot the players complaining about that, and this raises a lot of questions at the moment. We are at the end of the season, and we have a lot of injuries on the tour, and very severe injuries. For example, like Holger Rune. It's a tough injuries. And we know that matches are lasting longer and longer. And it's possible that fatigue is degrading the biomechanics of the shots and increasing the risk of injury in the medium and long terms. So I think that this is something that should be evaluated to help players better prepared, but also for tennis institutions, tennis authorities to reflect on the loadings placed on the player's body. And so the influence of fatigue on mechanical loadings and on biomechanics, for me, is a very hot topic for tennis currently. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, yeah, agree with all of those things, and it'll be interesting what will happen if they decide to not make any changes and keep moving in this direction. I think some bad things can happen, and then maybe when really bad things happen, they might make some changes, and then obviously it's too late and the damage is done. Paris Masters is on at the moment. Do you go? Do you watch? Are you involved in it?
No. For sure, I will watch the match, but I'm leaving tomorrow for Lithuania, for Vilnius, because there is the International World Coaching Conference from the ITF.
Nice.
So I have 2 presentations on the Congress. So no, I won't go to Paris, but I will be in Vilnius.
Yes, very, very busy. So, just to wrap up here, how often are you doing? Like, how often are you in the lab, and how often are you actually doing presentations more at conferences? What's the balance for you?
I try to find the right balance. It's not easy because I need time, of course, for transmit the knowledge to the coach and to share with them. And it's very important to also listen their questions, because for me it's a very good source of inspiration to have new ideas for new studies and new protocols. And also I have to take time for the lab with my colleagues to to set up the different protocols, to do the experimentations, to welcome players,
Yeah.
and to help them to improve the performance. So I would say, and I have teaching classes with my students, students who are experts in tennis and who want to become tennis coaches. So I would say 30% in the lab, 30% with the students, and 30% for transmitting the knowledge. It is the best. It's the best balance for me, but it depends on the months of the year. Sometimes at the end of the year, there are more solicitations for tennis players in the lab for biomechanical assessments and analysis. And after that, they are on tour, so I have more time for other things. It depends.
Yeah. No, that's really cool that you do all of those elements.
I try, but
Yeah, it would make the job very rewarding. So that's great. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you making the time. I know you're very
no.
busy. So no,
Thank you for the invitation.
no, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.